great. It's actually early in the morning, and yet I still, like I said, right? Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Somehow I brought it.
Listen. So I was meant to wash my hair this morning. That it didn't work. But listen, leave-in and some water worked magic. So now, like, I look at it, it's just like fabulous. It's like so moist.
Black hair problems. Black hair problems.
Listen, I just thought, do you know what? So now it's like it's feeling so nice and lovely because I thought I couldn't be coming on this morning looking like a hot mess. But anyway, I'm getting lots of comments so people can see us. So I guess I'm not going to introduce myself because people know enough about me, but I thought it'd be nice for you to say hello and let everybody know where in the world that you're joining me from, because it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Ibonte, and I am in beautiful BC, British Columbia, which is in Canada. And it's very early in the morning. As you can see, the sun is still sleeping. I'm not, but the sun is still sleeping. I think right now it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, but that's all right because this is a great cause. So I'm happy to be with you, Shireen. It's great.
Well, do you know what? I'm going to get cussed now because people are going to be like, why have you made him come?
You know what I mean?
But I know. We'll sort it out for next time, I promise. But, it's because I'd already agreed 12 o'clock. So I thought, I can't. And you get yourself in a bit of a state. So I thought, let me just do this one. And then you were so willing to get up at like ridiculous hours. So I am super appreciative.
You owe me lunch, dinner. Next time I'm in the UK, I'm knocking on your door.
I know. Do you know what? And you can bring your whole family. It'll be fine. Right. My house is big enough. Yeah. It's fine. It's fine.
All right. Sounds good.
Fine. So I thought what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about Black networks, Black forums, Black employee networks. So I do. So this is going to be no different to any of my other videos other than it's live, right? So I don't need to worry about editing, which is fabulous. I had to think about this. So I'm going to start off with my concerns. Let me start off with my concerns about Black networks. Because of all this conversation now, and there's a lot of businesses who have gone like, oh shit, I've got to do something. We've got Black colleagues in our business. Like, oh my God, I didn't realize this was a thing, but now I know it's a thing. So therefore we need to do something. Now, and there's two camps, right? There's those who already have some kind of Black network within their business, and there's those that don't. So if I talk about those that do, my concerns about that, and then I can jump to those that don't but are thinking about it or have just started one up like that. So the problem or the concern that I have is, as a leadership team, if you jump straight to your Black network over here, right, and you go, oh my God, guys, like, I need you. So listen, I know some of these individuals have been asked to write the statement, like the positioning statement about what the company is going to do, or, how they stand in solidarity or whatever else it is. They've also been asked to come up with a list of ideas of what the company should do to either support, because for some businesses they haven't yet caught up with this whole anti-racist thing, so I'm not going to give them more credit in this, but they've gone, what should we do differently? Can you tell us, because you're Black. And then they've also gone, like, what is it that you need from us as an organization? So they've done this whole what I call the barrier thing. And my concern with that is, one, they're not acknowledging those Black colleagues as individuals who are going through, like, listen, we all know in all four corners of the world, we're all dealing with what's going on in very different ways. Here in the UK, a lot of Black employees are dealing with the fact that they are working for businesses that don't want to acknowledge that life needs to change and they need to do something differently. Or they're working for businesses who might get that, but rather than them spend the time to do the work, and when I say do the work, I mean just trying to understand, like, the brevity of the situation, the context and all of that, they've knee-jerked and gone straight to those Black colleagues and put the burden on them and gone, you need to, can you help? And I'm not saying that they've done it deliberately thinking, but they've not thought about it. That's why I say it's not been thoughtful, because they've just jumped, not been conscious of where those Black colleagues are in their journey or their experiences. Some might be willing to help, some might not, but they've assumed, because by definition that they've got them, that that's okay to do that. And then the other thing, because I know this too, because I always say to people, like, people whisper in my ear, like they tell me all sorts. I've got screenshots, I get emails, I get all sorts of stuff, so I know what goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But then they've also said, as a group, so they've given them extra work and said, can you come up with what you like, the bare bones of what our strategies look like? Mm-hmm. Can you come up with X, Y, and Z? And so I do think it's unfair to assume that they were, if the network says, you know what, we'll do this, and oh my God, like, we've been waiting for this moment for years, that's different. But to just jump in and basically go, as a business, we can't do anything until our Black network or our Black forum mm-hmm. presents whatever they think, I think is really bad. Do you know what I mean? And maybe, because as we know, I'm on a mission. So, that's how I'm seeing the world. But I know, because I get the messages, how this is making some of these Black colleagues feel, and they're in between a rock and a hard place, because what they say to me is, well, Shireen, I can't say no. I don't want to do this. I don't like being put in this position. I don't want to be the spokesperson for all of the Black, particularly if there's a lot of Black employees in the business. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be the spokesperson. It's too much pressure. But if I say no, that makes me feel that I'm not helping my other Black colleagues, or it makes me feel like I'm going to get in trouble mm-hmm. because I've said no. And because this has happened, when they do say no, they go, I'm not comfortable because, I need my own time. The leadership have turned around to them and said, well, this is exactly the problem, because when we try and help as a business and we're reaching out to you to say, we want to help you do this, you've got nothing to say. So you can't blame us then as a business for not trying to, and there are some people that go, Shireen, there's no way that's happened. And I go, listen.
Oh.
So I'm going to stop there so you can talk, Jack, because I can go on all day. But so that just gives you an inkling. There's so many other things that we can say about this, and we'll get to it, because then I'm going to keep an eye on the comments and bring some stuff in. But kind of, what's your sense? How much or how little do you see from what I've talked about, particularly from a Canadian perspective, or just life, what you see, right?
Yeah, I think the climate here is identical, quite frankly, and what I never really quite clearly understand is that businesses seem to be lazy in doing the work. There's this fear of getting it wrong, so then they're going to the authority. And just because I'm a Black person doesn't mean that I'm the authority on all Black issues. So my example is, I was born and raised in Germany, for instance. I was raised by a Jamaican woman and a Ghanaian man. I have very strong African values. My experience of racism, for instance, is Germany, UK, and some in Canada. I don't have the African-American experience. I can relate to it easily, but it's not my experience. So how could I be the expert? And I think the other piece is that it's, what became really popular is this political correctness. Oh. And what that means to me is fear of saying the wrong thing and the pressure to be perfect. Now, I think businesses are really afraid of making mistakes because they're worried about liability. They're worried about bad PR. And I'm thinking we have to learn to be comfortable having difficult conversations. Mm-hmm. We have to be comfortable being wrong. We have to be comfortable saying it and then learning, as opposed to outsourcing. And outsourcing in itself, and I'll just assume, because it's very early in the morning, that it comes with the best of intention. I'll just assume that it comes with the best of intention. I'm thinking there's a management team, leadership team that's saying, you know what, we don't know. We want to get it right. We have some folks who might be deeply affected by this. Let us consult with them. And I'm using the word consult on purpose. Normally it's outsourced, and it shouldn't be. It should be in combination with. And there should be space for any person of color to be able to say, actually, I'm not comfortable. Mm-hmm. Please do your own work. Mm-hmm. And really, Shireen, we're talking about the simple principle of human decency. This is not rocket science.
Right.
I don't need to be physically raped for me to understand that raping women is not okay.
Oh,
There's lots of work I can do on my end without consulting a rape victim. So again, I think a lot of businesses don't understand that it's re-traumatizing. It is re-traumatizing those groups. And that is something that if the group is consulted, that might be good feedback to give back. Yes, we can support at some point. Do your own work first and understand that even this question is traumatizing.
Oh,
and
listen.
then my hope is that the business will then take ownership and say, well, I'll say the organization or the leadership for that matter, that they will say, you know what, actually, you're right. We shouldn't have made you in charge. We should do our own work first. And this is about just understanding marginalization, privilege, power. Those kind of pieces are straightforward.
Yeah.
If I'm standing on the backs of others, how about I just get off and support them?
Yeah.
That is human decency 101.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from the Black perspective, this has happened recently in an arena that I'm in. I personally feel deeply moved to want to support people, support my people, uplift is where I come from, as part of my cultural background. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not responsible for all Black people. So what often happens in organizations that they will look at any Black person and say, well, if Jeff says it's okay, then we're okay. Well, but Shireen says we're not okay, so maybe that isn't okay. And then they get confused. There's lots of pressure on people to have to show up in a perfect way. That in itself, again, is, to me, part of the racism. It's holding people of color to a different standard.
Yes.
So I don't have the luxury of showing up angry when I'm hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I'm the angry, dangerous Black guy.
Yeah.
Because as the authority, as the one who's supporting and helping, I must be kind, caring, speak in a way that is engaging and calm so that you don't get upset. Because if you get upset, then I'm dangerous, and that's why we can't have the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So this, to me, now is really about learning to be uncomfortable, being comfortable with discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna pick, because this
Oh, please.
No, right. So I'm just gonna show this. Hey girl. So I'm just going to show this comment because I just want to address this. So I am not saying do not consult, because Jeff used exactly the right term, right? So I am not saying, we need to not consult with them. What I'm saying is that shouldn't be the default starting point and putting all of the responsibility on Black people or Black employees. The other thing that I've mentioned a few times in my video, let me just figure out how to then take this off. I mentioned this a few times in my videos, is you cannot build a meaningful solution in your business if Black people are not involved. So I do not care I don't care who you bring in externally. This is not about externally. This is about if you've got Black people in your business. I'm just going to start off with that, and you've got colleagues. So you have to do some work, meaning that you have to understand the foundations in which what happened in the past to bring us here today. That's what I mean when I talk about doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And then you decide how much or not you're willing to commit to making meaningful change. Because listen, for some businesses, they just want to be able to, put a little statement out that says, we stand in solidarity, and all of that jazz, and hope. And they might put like another something out like a couple of weeks later, because they're still living in this hope that this is all going to die away. So you have to decide as a business, like, if you are going to do this, and this is the conversation that I've been having with CEOs, and to say to them, like, you've got to understand that potentially the return on investment, for want of a better phrase, you may not see in your tenure. That shouldn't stop you from starting now. Because we have to move away from this immediacy thing. Like, if I do something today, I need to see immediate payback. This issue with race has not been solved for generations. So you ain't going to solve it in a 6, 12 month, 2-year cycle, but it doesn't stop you from making the change. And then you do talk to your Black employees. And what I do want to say too, because I know we've got like plenty of Black people get, oh my God, Shireen, don't forget to say, is this is where, as Black people, we got to get better at using our voice. We got to get better at saying, like, enough is enough. We got to get better at saying, at holding our hands and say, I need you to listen to me now. So basically, we need to center ourselves, even if your business is not centering you. For those that can, I'm not, like, as people go, oh, I'm still not ready. Because there are plenty of people.
I got to stop you there. It's challenging. as a person who's found his voice, I will speak up. I have to also recognize my privilege as a male, as my privilege as a male who's 6'4", as a privilege as a male who's educated, as a privilege as a male who comes from a family that is highly educated and is in positions of leadership. It might be easier for me than for others. I don't want to put the burden on every Black person and say you need to be able to find your voice. Right?
No. The point that I'm making is there are some people who have been waiting for this moment for years. They're the people that I'm talking about. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying like, because there's some people that can't, and that's fine. But there are some people who kind of go in, do you know what? There are so many things that I want to say.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's a bit like, you know what? You've got an opportunity now, because there are some businesses that might not give you permission, is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
Well, yes and no. So yes, completely makes sense.
Yeah.
And I also wonder about whether it's safe to use one's voice, right? So there was a comment in the chat about empathy and empathy and compassion. I think empathy and compassion aren't enough. It's allyship that's required, true allyship. And not every company is truly mindful of making these changes. So to me, sometimes anti-racism feels like it's trending, as opposed to it actually being something that people are saying, hang on a second, I need to examine my own privilege. How do I show up as a person in the world, never mind as a part of this organization? So just because a business, and I want to be really mindful of this, just because a business implies that they're now starting to look at anti-racism or at racism, which angle we want to take, doesn't mean they're actually looking at it. Does it make for great PR to say, yes, we are now a company that is doing something about it? 100%. But I look no further than the structure, the system, and how it's set up for people who have less power to have a voice. And if the system isn't set up, if leadership isn't saying there won't be any repercussions for you being clear and firm with us, there won't be any repercussions for you not showing up in your most noble self, there won't be any repercussions for you calling me out. That's the environment you can use your voice. Or it is an allyship, and I think that's where the Black network groups actually come in handy. Where there's a, and I say this loosely, where there's a soft pillow to fall on. Where
it's
there
a shelter
might
from
be
the storm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Shelter from the storm.
Well, exactly. Which is not, and again, it's not always shelter from the storm, because there's other stuff going on there too.
But in that context,
absolutely. So it's important, I think, for us to find our voice amongst each other. To make sure that we feel safe and have backup. So when one person stands up, that the rest stand up with them. That unity is absolutely key. It doesn't mean we all agree on everything, that we all have the same experience, but there is a unity in saying, you know what, enough is enough. It's one too many. And we're not okay with this anymore. And I think I really want people to understand that you and I are not talking about Black versus white.
Can you tell them, please, Jeff? Please explain this again.
This is a human issue. It is about, and again, I bring this back to what I said earlier. It's about human decency. It's about saying to myself, the many things that I have going on for myself as a male, as the heterosexual privilege, all those kind of things. If I am not willing to look at myself, that in itself means that I'm willing to stand on someone else's back.
Correct.
If I'm not willing to call myself out, if I am not stopping myself from having that boys locker talk, I am part of the problem. So I think what this is calling for is really for us to be mindful of ourselves. We are so good to say, prayers for whatever on our social media feeds, and we'll black out our Instagram feed for a day. It doesn't make a difference. If I'm going back to my white wine spritzer and watching whatever on TV, there's fires outside that I'm allowing to burn. So if I'm not grabbing a pail of water and saying, how am I the fire? That is the issue.
Do you know what? Sorry. No, Carrie, no.
So what I do is that I engage leaders in tough conversations. I'm not afraid of losing my job. It's part of my privilege, quite frankly, that I can afford to not be afraid of losing my job. But I want to have tough conversations. And it's not only encouraging others to have tough conversations, it's really about me being able to have tough conversations with myself. I have to hold myself accountable. And that is not about trying to be perfect. It's about saying, what can I learn any given moment?
Yeah.
So my social media feeds are full of information about things that don't seem to directly affect me, but they affect me because I'm part of the human network. I'm part of the planet. So anything should affect me. It is all of our problem. If I don't care about, I don't know, racism toward Asian people, I am now part of the problem regarding the Asian children of my Asian friends. How can I not create a good environment for them going forward? So I want others to care about my son. He is the most important part of my life. If you don't think that racism is an issue, you are telling me directly that you are willing to let my son suffer in this world. If you have children, you value and love your children, you should hope that I care about racism, sexism, ageism, all the isms to make sure that your children are safe. Now, why is that an argument?
Listen,
why are we sitting here saying maybe we should encourage people to be mindful? Why?
Yeah. And I think that's the bit where I get really frustrated, and I have my moments, right? Because people see my moods because up and down, because I record it every day, and it's partly to your point about the fact that in this there is some work that I have had to do on myself.
Absolutely.
Right. So going back to your point when you rightly corrected me, about this thing about like the burden of finding your voice, and I say to people, listen. And I've said this to other Black people who've gone, you know what, Shireen, I wish I can be as brave as you. And I said, listen, don't watch that. Because it took me 17 years to find my voice.
Yep.
So, and I said to somebody, my second birthday, 8th of January, in case anybody's paying attention, is the 31st of May, because that's the day I found my voice. I will celebrate 2 days a year going forward. So when I challenge, I'm not sitting in judgment.
Yes.
Right, because that's also an important thing. I'm not sitting in judgment because
Could
the
you please say that again, Kareem? Please say that
Okay.
again. When you
Can I say that one
please
more time?
let the people know when you are being challenged. Say it again. When you challenge.
So when I'm being challenging, I'll say this because I always say this. I'm not sitting in judgment, and the reason why I feel confident to be able to say that is because, in the same way that I'm challenging white senior leadership teams, in the same way that I'm with love and affection challenging my Black brothers and sisters to go, listen, we've also been complicit in some of this, me included, because we've done this, is because to your point, we all have to do better, but we all have to make a decision to do better, because it's not enough to be bystanders and watch all of this play out and go, they're already doing that over there, because I've done that for 17 years. Do you know what I mean? And I've gone, it's not a fight worth fighting, all of that stuff. So in my mind, I rationalized my lack of challenge in areas and situations that affected me, but also that affected other people. So what I'm saying is I'm realizing that I was part of a problem. It doesn't matter, ignore the black-white thing for a moment, but this is just about standing up for what's right and what's wrong.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to your point about the human, the leveling of it. And I think the other thing, it is massively important, and I'm very aware of this, I guess, which is why, as you said, I'm in a position of privilege too, Jeff, meaning I can say whatever the hell I want. Ain't nobody going to come for me. Don't watch me. I'm really honest, and I say to people, don't watch me. Don't engage in anything I've got to say. But there are many people who are employed and who rely on their livelihoods, and to your point, who don't feel safe to speak up. And what I'm saying to those organisations who were so quickly to go, oh, but I'm going to go to the Black person or the Black colleagues. You know how I feel about the one poor Black person who's in a business. Do you know what I mean? And everybody's like,
the pressure.
Don't, because I've been there, and that's before there was anything to do with kind of Black Lives Matter or the focus was on it. But it's understanding, just because you say to them it's safe for them to speak up, because as somebody said to me, Black is the new Black, it's trending right now. doesn't make it so because you said it. Because if your culture and your behavior beforehand has not aligned to that, then you can't turn around and say to them, okay, speak your truth. Go on, we're willing to listen. So you have to your point, you've got to do some work to build the foundations to create that safety. And that potentially means, you might not make the progress as quick as you want to make. But what you can't do, and this is where I get like really chippy, is what you can't do is use that as an excuse for you as a business and you and a leadership team to commit to change and go to do something differently. Because I've seen that has been happening, because they've gone, well, I've gone to the group and they haven't really got anything to say. We've got 3 Black people in this department and I've asked them and they're kind of like, they're sitting there in silence. Because again, it's that inference that we're doing something wrong, because it's a bit like, because what they're saying in when they're telling me that is the world has given you a voice, so it's your fault that you're not standing up and using it. Do you know what I mean? And it's because we're not yet at this point of safety. Anybody who follows me on particularly on LinkedIn has seen some of the absolutely appalling commentary. And then those same businesses are going, yeah, but racism is not a massive thing. I don't understand why you Black people are not speaking up. And Jeff, I would love to tell you, in the 31 days I've been speaking every day, that we've moved on. But that is still a response to them not doing anything.
Serene, a couple of things. As you're speaking, what's coming to mind is looking at organizations and what protocols they put in place for psychological health and safety.
Yeah.
And that goes across the board, right? So we can't just say, let's have a conversation in the absence of having to look at what mechanisms have we put in place as an organization to create psychological health and safety. Because if we don't have that in place, it's not safe for people to speak up, number one. Yeah. Number two is saying to anyone, why don't you speak up, is so ignorant. It is, I don't have the words for this. So part of what I remember, my mother was a nurse and midwife in the UK. Is one of the many women who was encouraged to come from Jamaica to the UK, to London, of all places, to become a nurse, went through all her schooling and everything else. And I remember my mother telling me that she went to stores. I remember seeing signs on stores that said, no Irish, no Blacks, no dogs.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is my mother, who's not that old.
Yeah.
So my generation grew up or was raised by a generation that was fearful to speak up.
Yeah.
That was taught that staying under the radar is the least dangerous. I'm using that instead of safe because it was never safe.
Yes.
Because this I can't ever turn off. There's no cloaking device for this. So it has to be about, how do I stay safe? How do I stay quiet? Because if I'm loud, if I use my voice, there'll be repercussions. So my generation grew up with keep your mouth shut, be careful, keep your head low, hang out with your own, make sure that you're safe and comfortable. Don't give them a reason. Now here we are, 2020. There's a child with a hoodie. Is that a reason to be shot and killed?
Mm-hmm.
There's a person sleeping in their car. Is that a reason to be shot and killed?
Mm-hmm.
There's someone sleeping in their own home. Is that a reason to be shot and killed? There's a young boy walking down the street. Is that a reason to, in broad daylight, to call him out for how burnt his skin is? Because there must have been a fire somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if we're telling people, why don't you speak up? Because we're listening now. It's ignoring I can't even say years, the centuries of brutal, careless, power-based oppression of people, the multi-generational trauma, the lack of trust that must exist to keep some level of control over self and safety. So just because the doors are open doesn't mean you walk in.
Right.
I mean, show me any dog that you beat once a day and twice on Sundays. Ask me if that dog is going to walk through the door when I call the dog. The dog will not, because it's cautious.
Mm.
Again, I'm not saying that we are dogs. It's
No,
just
no,
an
no, 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 no,
example.
no, 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 no. It's the analogy. No, no, no,
This is
don't.
an example of trauma.
Yeah.
So again, that's why to your earlier point when you said, we should learn to speak up. I fully agree. But I
Mm.
think part of what I think that there's several conversations for those who don't identify as Black, who aren't Black, whatever, however you want to call yourself. There's work for you to do. And it
Right.
doesn't require for you to check in with your one Black friend or your two Black allies or whatever to see what they think. Just do your work.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much literature out there right now that you can grab several books, go to articles, do your work, and then say, here's what I've learned. How does that fit with your particular experience? Because it doesn't, whatever work I've done doesn't fit with every woman who's been part of the Me Too movement.
Right.
People have their different experiences. So there is no one standard.
Mm.
There is no one way to have the conversation. There is only open, honest, transparent dialogue that starts with me doing my work, you doing your work, and then let's have a conversation about what we've learned together.
Right.
And then the other piece is, and I'm reluctant to put this out now publicly, but I think the other piece is that we as Black people have to do our own work. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading lots, and just I love reading, and that's part of my Zen space. And a colleague of mine who's amazing, Alan Bailey, and I, we're going to start a podcast about difficult conversations, and we're both reading this book called Brainwashed.
Mm.
And it speaks to the deeply ingrained principles that automatically hold us back based on the racism we've experienced. And this is not an excuse to say, oh, by the way, I can't do anything today because look at what happened X amount of years ago. But it's to understand the multi-generational trauma. It's to understand that there's a reason we are the way we are today. And it's not that because we've chosen to do so.
Yeah.
It's because it's been deeply ingrained and beaten into people. That there's, I mean, if I look at even Canada for that matter, I am a stolen person on stolen land.
Mm-hmm.
The indigenous people of this land don't have power over their own governance.
Mm.
So if I don't look at that and say, and look at them and go, well, here's why they're not speaking up, and that's so challenging, and why aren't they more self-governing? It's ridiculous because it's me completely ignoring that there's been genocide for centuries, that the indigenous people of this land were nearly eradicated, wiped off the face of the earth. I can go to Ghana and see Ghanaian original people on their own land, speaking their own language, having their own names, having their own cultural traditions. That is not the case for most Black people in the US or in Canada, or in the Americas, I should say.
Or the UK.
Or the UK. In the diaspora, quite frankly, right? I was named by my parents Jeffrey. Now, Jeffrey's not a Ghanaian name, right? My Ghanaian name is Ni Aite Ajin. But imagine me applying for a job as Ni Aite Ajin. So again, as we're having conversations, it is really important for us as people of color to learn to have some more empathy and care for ourselves individually and for ourselves collectively, and to do the work to understand how we got here. So we don't get on top of each other. That we can have difficult conversations. I can call you out without you thinking, hey, Jeff, why are you being a traitor?
Yeah.
We're going, you're an ally, Jeff, and you love me and you love us.
And you want me to be better because
exactly. We're trying to level up together, right? But again, we've been taught to not agree with each other, to not love each other.
Yeah. And we have to fight within each other, because that's the problem with the principles of scarcity. Because as a people, we know there is only room for one of us. So what does that do to our psyche when we know we should be helping our fellow brother and sister?
Absolutely.
But we're all looking at each other going, but there's only one space at the table.
Exactly.
And this is the consequences of white supremacy. This is the consequences of structural racism that I talk about. And this is everything that you've just said is why you know, as a business, if you were going to go on this journey, and it is a journey, and it's a journey that will far outlast all of us, right? You know,
Beyond us. Absolutely.
We're going into beyond us. What we're talking about is like the tip of the iceberg. Geez, we'll be here all year, me and you. But this is the type of getting into the roots of race that I call it. Right? So if you're thinking to yourself to make you feel better, I'm going to go and get a diversity and inclusion person. You know, you already know my feelings on that. We don't need to go into that today. But you're going to go get a diversity and inclusion person.
Yeah.
And they're going to fix it for you. Or you're going to make it the bolt-on of the chief people officer in the nicest way possible who hasn't got a clue. Right. And that's going to make you feel better to go and solve this problem. Okay, I'll accept it, provided they're having these conversations. Because if they are not talking about safety, if they are not talking about generational trauma, if they are not talking about the principles of scarcity, if they are not talking about how, as Black people, we've had to internalize our treatment for generations, that means even when we can, like, stick up for ourselves, for want of a better word, we can't, because we are not in power and because the opportunities for us are less. And I think those are the sorts of conversations. And I think the other thing that I'm going to go over to conversate onto the comments. We'll pick some comments and we'll carry on, but we'll be some comments. But the other thing that I want to say to people, like for anybody who's listening and just what I call catching up, you know, so all of this is part of their catching up, as opposed to those that are there, they're like on top and they're like, yes, like we get it, is forget whether it's Black Lives Matter, forget the movement from that point of view, forget what you hear it's called in the media, forget all of that. Don't argue with me or with anybody else over what I call frivolous terminology. Because what I'm talking about when I talk about this is racial injustice, or the examples that you use, Jeff, you know, about as particularly Black men and Black boys. Jesus, you know, I've got a younger brother, you know, and literally for years I've never bought him a hoodie. I would love to, but I don't want him walking the street in a hoodie before somebody gets excited. Do you know what I mean? They might not in this country, because obviously we don't have the gun things, but they're not going to, but there is going to be a problem. Do you know what I mean? So, and what I say to people is what we're talking about is fairness and equity.
That's it.
And human decency. In the same way that we were all expected to be humans during the pandemic, which we're not out of yet, and the lockdown. So we've shown we have that in our spirit. We didn't say to people who were affected by coronavirus, oh my God, like go through all the symptoms that you had. Like where were you when you had it? How did you have it? What were you doing? You know, before we then decide how we're going to help them, we just help them. So that's why I get pissy, because I'm a bit like, why have we as Black people still have to do a lot of work to help other people understand why enough is enough? Why is it not enough for some people to see us hurting? And God knows it's like, you know, you see our trauma played out every day pretty much. Why is that not enough to get
because
people
it's normalized, Serene? Because it's normalized. It is deeply ingrained in the fiber of our society, is that the pain of some is to be ignored. That the pain of some is the price you pay for the gain of others. And, you know, if we're going to have real talk, I think it's my responsibility to bring up also the fact that it is difficult to have honest and brave conversations.
Yeah, of course.
I understand, as a human being with empathy, I get white guilt. I get that it sounds like, oh my gosh, if I'm white, I'm bad. And then I feel really terrible, and it's so much to do. And how do I even have the conversation? If I say the wrong thing, people will get mad at me. Well, yes. And that is the journey to walk. But it doesn't mean that as a white person that you have to feel bad about everything you do.
Correct.
This is not about, again, this is not about Black or white.
No, and it's not about revenge. Listen, it's not about revenge. What we're saying is, if we're all on this planet together, if I must bring in all lives bloody matter, but you know, if we're all on this planet together, okay, it cannot be right that because of the color of your skin, you are placed in a superior position. That means other people don't have the opportunities that you have. What is so difficult to understand about that principle? And that's the bit that I don't understand, why
Mhm.
white people are so anti understanding that. Do you know what I mean?
Because they don't have the experience. So,
Uh,
and again, I look at it from a human systems point of view, and I think so. Why would a certain group not be able to have a conversation? Excuse me. It's because they haven't had to practice that. There hasn't been practice to have difficult conversations, because in privilege you don't have to have difficult conversations.
yeah.
You
Because you can
you
do it and life doesn't change for you, right? You
well,
cannot engage in the conversation and your life
yeah.
is still fine.
And you have the privilege of not having to look at certain things. I
Yeah.
get that. And so whatever layer we place on this, if I've never been asked to have a different conversation regarding a different topic, it'll be hard for me to have that conversation.
Yeah.
However, as human beings, we know what difficult conversations are like because we have them all the time. Maybe not about topic of racism, but we
Yeah.
do about maybe finances. We may about sexuality. We certainly do about religion,
Yeah.
politics. We have difficult conversations all the time. So lean into this.
Mm-hmm.
Be brave enough to lean into this,
Mm.
because fear and comfort means someone else is is suffering under your watch. And that's not, if it's not okay with you for you to suffer when I can make a difference, then why should it be okay for me to suffer when you can make a difference?
Word.
However, again, I go back and say there's a system, and please, if you haven't read Brainwashed, but I believe it's Tim Burrell, read it, please. And this is, and although it's specific to the Black experience in Africa and in the U.S., it is really about the human experience in life, and it'll tell you lots and lots about privilege.
Mm-hmm.
It is vitally important that we take it upon ourselves to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the mission of life. We are born and we have to learn to hold our heads up, to speak, to walk, to crawl. It's life is about learning. And so if we think about racism, and if you're in any position of power, if you're a CEO of a company, if you're in leadership, please hear me clearly. We will not stamp out racism because we have 2 workshops and some sort of online module.
Oh,
We will not stomp out racism because we've changed the structure of our organization for the next year. We're talking about trauma that, as Indigenous people of this land here in Canada talk about, it takes 7 generations to clean things up.
yeah.
7 generations. But there's nothing wrong with building a foundation today.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't build it today, it'll take yet 8 generations because we were too lazy to do it.
Right.
I am not okay with that. I do not want to take my last breath as a future ancestor saying, well, you know what? I was too lazy. I was too afraid. So the next 7 generations, you guys deal with it.
Right. Right. And I think I'm just going to say one thing before I go to the comments, because we get loads, which is amazing.
Yeah, which is awesome. I
Is
can see it.
Yeah, I did. For anybody that saw it, I did a conversation with John Wilson, the group CEO from Total Jobs, and one of the things that I said to him, because I've used this a lot when I've been talking to CEOs about this, you know, those brave people who still want to talk to me, is as an individual, but also as a leadership team and as a business, you got to decide what side of history that you want to be on.
Yes.
Because every time we read the history books and we see all these, listen, I'm not even going to get into the list of atrocities that have happened in the last 100 years.
No.
But at every time there was a fork in the road. And the fork in the road said, I'm going to bury my head in the sand. I'm going to carry on doing what I've always done. In the business world, that means I'm going to carry on selling my product or service. I'm going to carry on advertising X, Y, and Z, because I'm going to ignore what's going on over here, and I will let other people do it. And then the other fork in the road says, okay, what can I do in my little sphere of influence? This is not on a big scale. This is going back to the individual.
Yeah.
What can I do so that in further years down the line, I can say, do you know what? This is the side of history that I chose to be on.
Mm-hmm.
Because for every single thing that's happened, we all have choices,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And again, I would say to people, I'm not sitting in judgment when I say that, because you know what? You make the choice in the way that you make the choice, but you've then got to live with the repercussions. And for me, the choice that I made is I could have, when I was crying the night before I, did my video that said this is how I felt. I was crying the morning that I did, and I could have easily sat in and let that push me back from doing it, because there was a perceived level of comfort that I could have carried on living. That was my fork in the road. And then I decided that I couldn't, and off I go. And I think we forget that this is no different than some of the other things that we've seen in history, in that every human being has a choice. When Black people are being lynched, you have a choice. The people had a choice who were standing watching, even if they didn't believe in all of that, even if they hated it. Do you know what I mean? And it's almost like every time we're always so quick to pass this to history and say, but we're better now as people, we're better. And then I go, but then are we really? Like, collectively.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a very, like, that's a whole nother deep conversation to almost have about this. But sometimes it is, one of the ways I say to people to push you out of this inertia is to say, as you said, it's not about perfection.
No.
It's not about feeling like you've got to come up with like a 10-point strategy that has all the work streams and the Gantt charts with this, just to say that, what, I am not happy about this as a human being. I'm not happy about this as a CEO, as a leadership team. And I know that I am in an elevated position of power because I own the business, because I'm a shareholder, because. And this is how I'm going to use my influence to affect change in the way that I know how.
And what we haven't talked about yet is dollars and cents.
Oh, we're gonna save that, because if we do that, nobody's gonna have a chance to comment.
Okay.
So we got to come back. So we will get into the economic, because I got views on that one. We will get into the economics, but I think let me go and
perfect.
Let me go and I don't know if you can hear my 2-year-olds, but I've banned my kids. No, listen, they're coming. I banned my kids.
Oh, the sun's waking up.
Right, so here we go. Hi, Marissa.
Hi, Marissa.
Right, so this is Marissa's question. Allyship. Right. Oh, right, Jeff, I'm going to let you kick off with this one. This is a really good thing, because I'm guessing, Marissa, the point that you're making is about performative allyship, right? The people that do social media posts and say the words, but then they don't do anything else, and then they carry on doing what they did before. So I'm going to let you kick off with that one, Jeff.
Do I have another hour or?
No, you've got like 2 minutes, because I got loads. So you carry on.
All right. So I think if there's a desire for allyship, for genuine allyship, I'm 2 thumbs up, quite frankly. But to me, it's really about, is this trending or is this genuine? And I think allyship is a sexy word these days, because it sounds really good for PR, and it's a token band-aid. It's the, if we do one thing, then we're allies. And I think that true allyship has, let's say, the leadership team of the organization looking at themselves and saying, and making it public, being transparent, saying, we didn't know that we have exploited privilege. We didn't know that we were part of the problem as individuals, as an organization, and as an economic power in our particular industry. And here's the questions we're going to ask ourselves as we move forward. Anyone who says, here's the solutions we have, is someone who's very scary to me. Correct. Because how can we come up with a solution? We haven't asked all the questions yet.
Oh.
So I think true allyship comes with psychological health and safety. If that is not established, let's not talk about allyship yet. If it's not personal accountability, let's not talk about allyship yet. If there's a division, if there's a table between you and I as we're talking, let's not talk about allyship. Allyship is about me bearing it and saying, I am open, I am not afraid, or I might be afraid, but I'm not too afraid to have the conversation. That is true allyship. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything more to add. Yeah, I agree, concur. Right. Oh, I don't know what's going on here. So I don't. Do you agree with your thoughts and challenges? Okay, no. So I'm trying to follow a chain of comments, but I can't. So I'm going
Mhm.
to ignore that. Okay, so hi, Emma. Mainstream media has a part to play in racial bias. I'm thinking the silence is not because the screen is broken, because I'm not sure. That's why I'm silent.
It's a tough one, right?
Yeah. Yes and no,
Hmm.
because I think the problem is, let me just say what the problem is with this and these sorts of questions, not getting at you, Emma, so please, I'm just using this as an example, is it's not as simple as because the media have done this, this is why the cause has not been forward, and this is why racial injustice exists. This is why it's not just the media, because remember, the media part of the establishment, we've got educational institutions, we've got the government,
Hmm.
we've got businesses, we've got there's so many other things that all play part and parcel in this. Let's remember, and I always back to your point about when you said about Black people having to do some work with this, right? And I
Hmm.
remember somebody saying to me a few weeks ago, there's a bit like, oh my gosh, Shereen, like, what books should I be reading? What great things about Black history? And I turned around to them, and do you know what I said? I said, listen, we're roughly the same age. I sat in the same goddamn history lessons as you did, mate. Do you know what I mean? So you listen. So I sat next to you, right? We were learning about slavery as the only Black person in the class, and the teacher
Yes.
was. You remember that one? And I don't even know what this book that they use in education. And the worst thing was, when you have to read the passages of the books, so every like,
Oh,
oh, so guess who? Guess which child. Can you imagine? I can't even watch Roots. When my mum had Roots on
no.
VHS, like that's the awakening, is it? If anybody's Black, right, you know this. In the early 90s, you had to get to you got to an age, and it was a bit like, right, you're old enough to watch the box set of Roots. I
Yep.
haven't even watched it to this day, so I couldn't even
Hmm.
watch that in the safety of my own home.
Hmm.
And then you have to read out, the passage of, and I can remember the visual, and it was, how the slaves were locked in the ship. So, when they show the picture of how they were all lined up and then changing, then what happens, and even that, this whole thing about Black people not being able to swim very well, all of that stuff. And so I said to them, so I had the same education system as you. So the
Hmm.
point I'm making about that is it's not just about the media, because if the media fixed up tomorrow, do you know what I mean? They got
Hmm.
themselves together and went, right, we're going to just show full representation. The problem is still not solved. So all I'm saying to people is when you're asking these questions, like still ask the questions, but also like follow through. Think about, okay, so if we fix this one part of this problem here, what else is there still that leads to systemic racism and systemic inequalities, and what else do we need to fix? Because the danger is we focus on that and we think we're going to put all our energy to fixing that over there, and when that's done, that's going to fix the problem. Do you know what I mean? I know that didn't really answer the question. Sorry, Emma, it didn't answer the question, but
And Emma, I think it's a great point. If I can add to this, I think to me it's always about buyer beware. Media is going to represent whatever is going to sell, not facts. So I have to watch media with a critical eye. I have to ask
yeah.
questions. Go, why are they representing this? What else? What other angles are there? And it's easy to say media over there, mainstream over there. It's a system over there. It's me. I get
Yeah.
to choose what I expose myself to. And with today's technology, I can pretty much determine what shows up on my screen. I
Mm-hmm.
can there's algorithms that will feed me more of what I expose myself to. So if my mainstream media shows me, women who are barely clothed, it's because that's what I'm looking at.
Right.
So how about I look at some other things? How about I
Right.
ask myself, why is that being showed over there? Why are they showing that? Why are they showing young girls sexualized? All
Mm-hmm.
right, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get them to be consumers of clothes. They're trying to get them to grow up too fast. We're sexualizing young girls. We're making pedophilia okay socially, right? And we're furthering the agenda of I don't know, the mail. I won't go there. It's gonna go too long.
Yeah,
But
no, I get the point. Yeah. But there's a purpose
we
behind
need to
it.
be
There is a
critical
purpose.
when we watch mainstream media. We need to be very critical. We need to ask ourselves, what is the message here, as opposed to what is the fact that I'm learning about.
Right.
It's always, I think it's always about opinions and agendas, and rarely ever about facts.
Right. I must get to this question. Oh, right. I don't know who it is. LinkedIn users. It's probably somebody who's not connected with me. Connect with me, whoever you are, so I can see you ask this question. So what do you do when D&I teams aren't led by people who do not understand the Black experience, that yet they are the ones driving people experience in the organization? Oh my goodness. Right. This is you know what? I do get asked this question a lot. Right, so let me just my thoughts. You know what it is? It's because I'm trying to organize my thoughts.
Yeah,
people introduce me, I just like to say. So this is in not any order. The danger is with this is there is a difference between professional experience and the lived experience. I do think, and then there's plenty of people, you can tell me if you disagree. I do think with something like this is there is absolute mileage of amplifying the lived experience and hearing the lived experience if you are a white leadership team or a predominantly white business or a business with no Black people or any minority whatsoever. You do have to hear the lived experience. And whilst you don't have to be an expert in, I don't even know, what do you call it? Is there such thing as an expert in Black? I don't even know. You don't have to, but you do have to be very, very conscious, and you do need to have done the work. So this is why for this, I'm not anti bringing in consultants or whatever else it is. But to your point, Jeff, you need to be super, super critical of who you're bringing in and why you're bringing them, because people will be able to offer you different things, right? Me as an example, I'm not a D&I person. Nobody is coming to me. They keep trying. I'm like, listen, I can't solve your D&I issues, but I tell you what I'm really good at. I'm very good at calling out the bullshit. Meaning, I will stop you from self-congratulating yourself because you think that you've done something really good, and I'm going, but that ain't it. You know, so let's keep pushing. Let's have the difficult conversations. Let me make you feel. So there's things that I can do, and there's things that you can do even better, and there's things that somebody else can do even better. However, I will call out businesses who are doing this, who are deliberately going to white diversity and inclusion consultants and companies, or they're deliberately seeking out the white voice because they feel safe to have this conversation about race because there ain't no Black people in the room, because that is also happening. And that's why I think you've got to, as a business, you've got to be really clear, a bit like how you do every other process in your business. Why are you bringing in certain individuals? Why do you need to hear the Black experience? Understand why it's important to center Black employees within your business and what that will allow you to do. And then have that filter, because the reality is, if you're in a business with lots of Black people and they feel like you've not done the work, or you've got a D&I team who are still applying the same approaches that they've done over the last few years, which clearly have not made a difference, then you have lost any opportunity to make true, meaningful change. And I know that's not like a neat way of packaging it up, because there's so much in that, but I go back to, you've got to be really clear as a business what you're trying to achieve, and you've got to be willing to maybe unpick some of the traditional ways that you've tried to deal with this before, and go, is it working or is it not working? And then you make the appropriate decision from there. It's not a given that a D&I person can deal with this, just to be clear. It's not a given.
No, and what I'll add to that is, there's, again, buyer beware, right? So there's lots of consultants who can give you the academic experience and make you feel like you're doing the work. And then there's those who will make you feel uncomfortable in order to do the work.
Correct.
Now, it is, and again, from a business point of view, it is hard to know who the right person is to bring on board to help you work through it, right? So I understand it's difficult to sift through the sea of consultants who are surely great at what they do and very, very smart. When I'm thinking about hiring a consultant, I want someone who is not just an academic expert, because that is, the academic piece allows us to take a step back from the emotional impact. And if we don't understand it here, there's no point in trying to get it here, because then we don't act out of it.
Right.
So I think having consultants who truly personally understand what they're talking about and they have experience in this is really key.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it speaks to what you and I spoke about earlier in terms of having difficult conversations. There's many consultants who will do workshops and provide training that feels okay. You go there and, my heart aches for this group and I understand that's really difficult. Oh my gosh, lynching and racism, it's really bad. You know what? I've learned so much. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. But what have you learned about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So everything that I do when I'm doing workshops, and initially when I first got into the industry, I was thinking about, money and economics, and then the trapdoor that I fell into was to do a dog and pony show.
Mm-hmm.
And then after about a year or two, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror anymore. I said, I can't do this. Anything I do, I have to be able to sit with my spirit. I have to be able to look my son in his eyes and say, Dad did a good job. Dad tried to change the world today from his heart.
Mm-hmm.
So consultants, please understand that you do damage when you go into organizations and don't have them do the work. It's an opportunity. If a business says we want someone to help us learn, this is our responsibility to go in and help them truly learn, as opposed to continue to exploit and make money.
And then I will add to that is to say that same challenge, I will, for every internal diversity, equity, inclusion, whatever the titles,
yes,
people officers, HR directors, because I know there are people who, because they've told me,
mm-hmm.
who have HR directors who are still have locked down this conversation. They're not even willing to engage in any conversation. And these are non-Black employees
mm-hmm.
who are going to their business and saying, what are we doing about this? Because we haven't seen anything. So this is not Black people, just to be clear. This is a definition of the term ally, right? Who go in, this is not cool. I'm not, I can see how my Black colleague is affected by all of this. And I don't understand why we're not doing anything. So they're being locked down. And I think, do you know what? Like, I know we're in, and that's another conversation. We're in very challenging times. We know that unemployment levels are high, are high, and whatever else it is. What I will say to them is, to your point, Jeff, this has got to sit on your conscience.
Yes.
So if you know you are not equipped, don't brush this under the table of all the other strands and what about all the other people that are underrepresented or whatever. If you know you are not equipped with the skill set, the moral compass almost in terms of, calling out what's wrong. That's what I mean. I'm not judging, but calling out what's wrong. If you don't have the resilience, if you still haven't got the memo about why this is important and you haven't got it, and you are not doing the work on yourself. I'm not asking you to be perfect, but what I'm saying is if you feel like you are not honestly ready enough to push for change, you've got to be brave enough and put your hand up, because you will do more damage for your business. And let's be honest, I always claim this, CEOs ain't stupid, right? They know who is up to the task and who isn't. So on one hand, if you haven't got people self-selecting and going, do you know what, I need more, just ask for help. Do you know what I mean? There's the use of the world, Jeff, there's me to a point, I only do that much. But there's loads of other people. Ask for help. But equally, don't go and knock on Black consultants' door and expect them to give you free advisory services for you to then take that to then show that you know the stuff, because all you're doing is pay, and you're not acknowledging, crediting and paying them, because that's also something that's happened a lot. Like, I've shut that down now, but it was happening a lot. But then as a leadership team, you and a CEO, if you're doing the work, you can quickly see within your team who isn't. So you have to be brave enough and make those changes, or say, do you know what, I'm going to take this off you and I'm going to give this to somebody else, because we need to be committed to making meaningful change. And having that difficult conversation means we might just have to change the way that we do stuff, and all I'm saying to people is, as much as you'll go, oh God, I'll take this really personally, understand what we're trying to do here, and we're trying to affect a massive amount of change that over generations we haven't been able to do. So you can either get in the way of that, because your feelings are hurt, or you can say, do you know what, like, I will support in whatever way I can, and let me go and be brilliant over here because this is what I'm
Mhm.
really doing, you know.
Yeah,
And I
and I
know
think
it's
we
really
need to be.
difficult. I know it's
Yeah,
difficult. Like, some people going, oh my God, Shireen, how could you so simplistic? Like, I know, but that's why you will never see me be called a diversity and inclusion person, because that's not,
yeah,
why
yeah.
would I? Just because people are asking me to do all sorts of stuff, I'm very clear on what I can do, because I know what I can do to make a difference, and I know what I can't do. And I just urge everybody in the same thing that you said, for consultants, for internal people, to have the same lens. Like, what are you good at? What is your lane? And own that lane, because you can affect more change that way.
That's beautiful what you're saying. It's stirring me, which is great. Because to me, it's about professional efficacy.
Yeah.
Stay in your lane. Do what you do and do that well. And the other piece is get out of competence compulsion. There's this thing about, as a consultant, I must know what I'm talking about. So I won't ask questions. If someone says, can you do it? I'll say yes, as opposed to ask myself, can I actually, am I the right person? Should I pass on to someone else? This is not about making money. This is about making change.
Oh, there you
And
go.
so I think it's really important that we look at our responsibility and opportunity to make change.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know any person on this planet who hasn't had hardship in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Whether it's, and I don't care whether it's a bad hair day or whether you've been oppressed and beaten, we all understand pain.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have an opportunity to help people to become empowered, we have an opportunity to make change that people are less burdened. It's a responsibility, not just a choice. And that is really important. So if someone says, hey, Jeff, I heard you talk, could you do this over here for us? The question I should ask is, am I the right person for this?
Right.
Have I
And
have I
that's what,
done my work to be able to go in there and do that work with them? Do I feel safe now? Because if I don't, I should say so. And it
right.
doesn't mean I'm letting down Black people because I'm not going to be the Black person talking over there. It's me saying, because I love Black people, because I love people, I will do the right job in the right place with the right frame of mind.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think just because it's like it's 6 minutes past one. Oh my God, where's the time gone? We could be here all day. I just want to
Yeah.
say the other thing is that this is a thing that I'm not. When I say, like, I don't, and I'm going to make this point again because I feel like it's been lost. I can see a
Mhm.
couple of comments, and I just want to make this point clear. Is when I say I don't sit in judgment, because the amount of time, like, we all know this, when you've been, for those of you still in the corporate space, and I've been there, done that.
Mhm.
The amount of time that's wasted playing the blame game. So let me just be crystal clear with this. I am not, I'm not here for any conversation about whose fault it is, because the reality
Mhm.
is this is not one of those situations. So I will never engage in any conversations around, do I think it's the CEO's fault versus the HR director's fault versus
Mhm.
versus.
Mhm.
The key word that you used is accountability and responsibility. That's what
Mhm.
I'm interested in.
Mhm.
And what I'm interested in is, when you know differently, what do you do differently?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's all I'm interested in. Like, I ain't got all
Exactly.
day, because that's like a whole, and that's a deflection.
Mhm.
Because when we do that and we go, yeah, but I tried, and it didn't. What we're then making the conversation about is, we're trying to absolve ourselves of the responsibility and the guilt. So then we feel comfortable that nobody's going to come for us. But all of that does not help the cause. It doesn't help us make progress. It doesn't help us move forward. So
No.
every time you learn something new, always think about, I keep saying it's the fork in the road. What choices are you going to make? And then we will look at the choices that you make. It's not about blame game. Like, we can all do stuff differently. Nobody's perfect. But,
Mhm.
I just want people to understand that we have to get out of what I call making this like super micro and making it about us, and understands that we're to push through progressive change. Sometimes we are the blockers, so we might have to step out of the way,
Mhm.
and that's okay. So I
If,
just
if
wanted
they
to,
hire
yeah,
you instead of hiring me, I should be happy for you as opposed to going, oh no, I need the job. We're talking about scarcity, right? And again, I'm just talking about it is, and I'm reading in the feed here, if a business doesn't know where to start, how do you move on? It's about empowering others and questioning self. If I take it down to the bare bones, empower others, and question self. So where does that start? Well, I can question myself. I can have conversations with my spouse, with my friends, with my colleagues, and question myself. Who do I have in my network? Who am I hanging out with? What does that imply about my worldview? How might that affect others? And so I think that's why, as I looked at sort of the beautiful poster that you put up for this live feed, that's why some of these networks are so important. Is that we can go somewhere and have conversations without having to fear repercussions. Major, put it that way. And I say that loosely because there's stuff going on there too. But at least there's a place where where like-minded, like-spirited people can have more open conversations.
Right.
And that often can be the catalyst to finding the voice in arenas that aren't within those networks.
Right.
So we need those. We need those. And for those who say, well, but these networks are about exclusion instead of inclusion, explain to me why we have women's shelters that don't have men in there.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me why we don't have. Well, I won't go further. So this whole we need to be inclusive is ignorant of privilege.
Right.
It is about letting people be safe in a space where they can find their voice to use in a different space.
Right. And understand. Yeah. And I think, just because somebody's going to be like, I thought you were talking about employee networks. We are. It's all part and parcel of the same conversation, my friends. But
it's just many avenues to this. This could be a 5-year conversation.
Absolutely. And this is a great point in that I'm not saying you're going to have all the answers, but be really clear with what the purpose of those networks is. Yeah. It is fine for you to set up a network and say, do you know what? It's purely because we recognize as a business that our Black colleagues don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to create an environment where we've locked it down a little bit. We've got somebody in who can come and make them feel like their voice can be heard, and we want to center their experiences and their stories. I'm not saying that there isn't a value, but what I'm saying is you've got to be really clear about what you're using them for and who the benefit is for. Mm-hmm. Because if you're just setting them up just so you can go and give it to the HR manager over here and go, you run that, boop, 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 off you go.
Yeah.
And then it makes you feel good. And then on on your little strategy update, you've gone, well, we set up the Black network. So you know what, we can, because there's a lot of that going on. Mm-hmm. And so all I'm saying to people is, like anything, be thoughtful and really think about why you're doing these things. Think about the benefits, but also like the unintended consequences of doing that for Black people. Think about, if you're going to set that up, think about how you're going to communicate that to the rest of the business, and some of which might be on the whole All Lives Matter brigade, because there's still plenty of those. So how are you going to take them on that journey? And I think maybe that's the subject that I want to talk about as a separate thing, because that's a whole bit, because it's this understanding that not everybody is woken up. But as a business, and I would love to sit here and tell you that like everybody's getting the memo, but they're not. But as a business, you've got to think about how you deal with other people that aren't on the same page.
Absolutely.
Because that's a whole.
Absolutely.
I spend most of my time talking about that, if I'm really honest. Like the CEOs are going, like, I get it, Shireen, I get it, but. And that's the reality. Mm-hmm. But we will keep pushing through. We will keep pushing through. And I guess what I want to say to people is, this is not a perfect, neat subject. It's why I always have something to talk about every single day. Yeah. But what I was really keen to do when I decided to go live, partly because, people have seen this is what I do on video is exactly what we're doing now. I want to bring other people into the conversation from all over the world who I know are as brutally honest as I am, because I ain't got time for any corporate speak. So we can have these real conversations, and who can challenge me and give me different things to think about, in the same way that, Jeff, people listening to you will go, do you know what, Jeff has said something that I didn't even bloody think about. Like, that is the, dare I say, not to be my namesake, the HR conversationist, but that is the power of conversations. It's the power of something so simple that we forget, because we spend all our time making it really complicated. Yeah. And I'm saying to people, if I can cut through a lot of noise just by talking in my kitchen to a camera about how I'm feeling about all of this, there is so much that you can do that's at your fingertips. It's not always just about the big companies. You don't always have to be in a senior position to be able to affect change. You just have to decide that enough is enough and you want to do differently. And then wherever that journey takes you is wherever that journey will take you.
Yeah, and I'll add to that I want people to be really mindful of intent and impact. Just because we have great intent doesn't mean that the intent matches the impact that we're trying to achieve. So I think there's companies that have great intent and are blind to the impact of some of the pieces that they're putting in place. So, for instance, companies saying, we should really champion diversity and inclusion. Let's start having these conversations. Actually, Black folks, why don't you lead us in this? I get the intent. We want to change something. We actually genuinely care about creating change. But the impact is, now we further marginalize and put on the spot those whom we're actually trying to support. So intent never trumps impact. So please, if you're doing any work out there, always think about, obviously come with the best of intent, but please be mindful of the impact you're having. And that only comes from being open to getting feedback as opposed to going in as the expert who knows everything better. And then you look at resistant clients as opposed to a client who's giving you information about what isn't working for them. Right.
And just, I always keep saying this, guys, context is absolutely everything.
Absolutely.
And, my self-appointed job, because, I hired myself to go and do this, is we just need to think differently.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's, and I always keep saying this to people, like, I don't have all of the answers, but what I can do is give you different things to think about. I can give you different information from different people to think about. I can introduce you to different people who just have a different view and a different way of explaining things that we might be saying the same thing, Jeff, but people will probably quicker understand what you're saying before they understand what I'm saying. And that's fine, because we are all trying to go for the same destination. So I don't care who you listen to, as long as you're doing your work.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, genuinely, I don't care who it is, because and this is where we have to get out of our own way, and we need to put our egos to one side and go, this is for the greater good. And as somebody, I get lots of wonderful messages, people thank you, and somebody says, Shireen, you will never know the impact that you have on people, not just Black people, not just, and off you go. So I think if we stop thinking about immediate feedback, if we stop thinking about getting immediate gold stars, let's just do what's right, and let's take it one day at a time. Let's think about intent. Let's think about impact. Let's show people that we're willing to learn and we're willing to listen. I think collectively, bringing us all back together now, we can make far more change than, always wondering, like, who is the best person to do that. It actually doesn't bloody matter. Do you know what I mean? So on that note, I'm going to stop talking, because it's like 17 minutes past 1, and I think, like, my daughter is like trying to crawl on the floor to get to the fridge, so she's not she's not in the video shot. I can hear like voices. But I just want to say, Jeff, thank you so much for wasting a silly hour to come and talk to me. I think you've got some new fans. There's going to be some people hunting you down now, which is amazing.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I want to bring you back, because there's like loads. There's and you know what's really nice is the fact that I think, and I'll check the comments afterwards, but I genuinely think that, we need to do more of these conversations, and they are valuable, even if we're just thinking, like, I'm just venting my spleen or just saying what's on my mind, because, we need to do more of this as another avenue, not instead of, as another avenue of trying to push for change. So, and everyone who joined, we did it.
Yay!
I did it. First one. I will be back
Well done,
next week. I'm going to be back next week. I'm going to try and make it a little bit later. So I'm going to maybe try for like a 2 o'clock on the Friday, because I know some people from the States and from Canada and all over are kind of like, oh, Shireen, why are you making it so early? So you don't have to get up at stupid hour. But I'll make it a little bit later. But thank you everybody who just listened and messaged and engaged. Please go and connect with Jeff, because he's amazeballs for lots and lots of different reasons. But no, I super appreciate you, Jeff. So thank you so much.
And my gratitude to you, Shireen, that we connected over a comment on LinkedIn, and it's been everything happens for a reason. So I am just honored to be part of this, and you're doing great work out there as a human being, never mind as a Black person. So power
Thank
to
you.
you.
Yeah, I'll do my best. All right,
Mhm.
Chef. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna say goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.